All right, well, the Young Turks, Jake Ugratic is here with you guys. Good show, of course, coming up.
Great show.
Yeah, well, what are we gonna do? A bad show? That's not gonna happen. Yeah, we're gonna do the best show.
It's the biggest show. There's no other show that's even big.
That's right. And look, we're gonna do a very stable show. It's also gonna be a genius show. Very stable genius. There's gonna be Kofefe.
By the way, that was a reference to a Turkish saying. I don't actually think this. Well, this might be the biggest show online, but
yeah, but we do believe there are other big shows.
There are other big shows.
We want to clarify. We want to clarify.
Are we not merciful?
They once said there was no other show that was even big. Okay. Anyways, look, guys, a couple of quick shout outs in a weird kind of way. First of all, Mike Gravel has passed on. It's always awkward when talking about people who've died. Mike Gravel was an American hero. He fought up for corporate power. He fought against the military-industrial complex, and I didn't want his passing to go without us at least saying one thing about him. And so thank you to Senator Gravel for always fighting for the right things. And so I just wanted to make sure you guys knew what a hero he was. And then new attacks against Nina Turner, tons of money pouring in from corporate lobbyists. Now the majority Democratic Israel, blah, blah, blah. These guys, what does that have to do with Akron and Cleveland? They're pouring in tons of money against Nina Turner.
They're scared.
Almost all the corporate Democrats have come out against her. They are shaking in their boots. There's a reason why they're scared. So ninaturner.com/hello, because they're worried she's gonna go to DC and say, hello, somebody. They're not, and they don't want any piece of that. So make it happen, ninaturner.com/hello. All right, Casper, go.
All right.
At least 25 million people remain under heat alerts in the western U.S., with residents doing what they can to escape the hottest areas.
Never seen it here before. It's a little concerning.
That's right, it's definitely concerning. There is a record heat wave taking place in the Pacific Northwest, and the temperatures are absolutely brutal, especially considering the fact that it is still June, and typically at this time of the year in places like Seattle or even Portland, you could expect some light drizzle, temperatures in the mid-70s, but that is not what they're experiencing right now. For instance, Seattle surpassed its record set Sunday by 4 degrees Fahrenheit when it hit 108 degrees Fahrenheit Monday evening, and Portland for the third consecutive day recorded an all-time high temperature, record high, reaching 116 degrees Fahrenheit. The Canadian town of Lytton set a new national record for the second straight day when it hit 118.2 degrees Fahrenheit. So again, these temperatures are incredibly brutal. When you look at states like Washington State, there are areas that are experiencing rolling blackouts. Seattle specifically is struggling, considering the fact that half of its residents don't even have air conditioning, because typically they don't need air conditioning. And climate scientists, of course, are linking this to the fact that our planet continues to break temperature records year after year after year. In fact, why don't we go to this next video that gives you a sense of just how dire the situation really is.
For the first time ever, Seattle reached triple-digit temperatures Monday for a third day in a row.
Everything's sold out. Like today, we couldn't get any ice. Everything is completely gone.
For days, a dome of stifling heat has parked itself over the Pacific Northwest, causing some restaurants like this drive-in to temporarily close and roads to buckle. Tanker trucks in Seattle hose down drawbridges to try to keep the steel from expanding.
Here we go.
Larry Snyder calls himself a community helper, taking donations to give water to the homeless or anyone in need.
Water is the one thing that the people on the street are really short of right now.
In Portland, which reached a record-breaking 116 degrees on Monday, the extreme heat was enough to bring light rail and streetcar service to a halt.
So obviously right now, politicians are going back and forth about infrastructure spending, Biden's infrastructure bill, just how far will it go? And I think when we discuss the infrastructure bill, not just us here at TYT, but the national conversation and debate about it, certainly the conversation and debate happening in Washington, seems to consider infrastructure improvements and climate-related provisions as two separate things, when in reality, they're very much interconnected. Not only do we have crumbling infrastructure that needs to be managed and updated, but it needs to be improved considering the climate conditions that we're dealing with. And so I want to just go to two quick tweets that give you a sense of what roads are looking like in the Pacific Northwest. Roads are literally buckling as a result of the hot temperatures. There's also this photo of that was posted by Portland Streetcar, its Twitter account. They say, in case you're wondering why we're canceling service for the day, here's what the heat is doing to our power cables, right? And then you'll see the images of the roads with these giant cracks and all this damage as a result of the heat.
Okay, so we're almost quite literally melting the planet. We're at least melting the cable wires. Well, I don't know what it's going to take to spur action, because the reality is, in America, the number one problem is propaganda. So the more that the oil and gas industry manufactures doubt, just like the tobacco companies used to, the more that the politicians play along with it. The media plays along with it a little less than they used to. They still are need to do a lot of catch up on it. And yes, it is the corporate media. But mainly in this case, it's the politicians' fault. So let's go over some of the shocking parts of this. So temperatures in the Northwest for us and British Columbia and Canada are 25 to 50 degrees higher than they normally would be at this time of year, okay? In Portland, they are 40 degrees above their average at this point in the year. 40 degrees. In Seattle, in all of recorded history, they've only had 3 days where they've gone over 100 degrees. They just had 3 days in a row where they were above 100 degrees. We're breaking every record there is. We're breaking it here in America. They already broke records in Siberia for heat, in the Arctic for heat. At one point, the Arctic was cold, was hotter than Las Vegas, and on and on. We can go through all of the planet and show you all the places where there are massive records for heat. And so when you look at the heat dome, like the one created in the Pacific Northwest here, it is exactly as the scientists predicted. They said that the temperatures would go up, they went up. They said there would be more extreme weather events like heat domes, and there are. And they said they would be more extreme, and they are. So, and what's amazing about it, you go back and look at what Jim Hansen wrote 30 years ago, and it is spot on, right? So Republicans attacked all the scientists because of the money that they get. So if when the oil companies give you millions of dollars, they're not doing it for your health. They're literally doing it for the exact opposite reason. They don't mind melting the planet at all, as long as they extract a couple of more dollars in the short term before we all hit a disaster. And now, guys, we're no longer headed towards climate change. We're in climate change.
Yep.
We're in. Go to Portland's 116 degrees. Portland, in the beginning of the summer, 116 degrees. Unheard of. So look, it's also affecting Idaho and Montana. I don't know if Republicans are capable of ever changing their mind, even if they're melting. Well, like, no, it's still not true. Like, and oftentimes it's not. I mean, you'll see a lot of Trump supporters. There's been lots of stories of this with nurses and doctors saying their last words dying of coronavirus was, I thought it was fake, or why is this happening to me, etc. So at their last breath, they still cling on to the falsehoods. So we have got to somehow push past the maniacs in this country to actually take action.
Well, there are several massive obstacles in the way. So let's focus on what's happening domestically. Domestically, you're right in calling out the Republicans and their continued denials of human-caused climate change because of who funds them. They want to do right by their corporate donors. The fossil fuel industry is certainly a little more favorable to the Republican Party compared to the Democrats. However, as we know, and as we've talked about on multiple occasions, when it comes to a lot of the major issues that matter the most to the lives and livelihoods of the American people, there are similarities between Democrats and Republicans. Now, Democrats might have the right messaging, rhetorically speaking, they're good at drawing the human connection to climate change. But look at what's happening with this infrastructure debate right now, Cenk. I mean, Republicans in the Senate effectively stripped Biden's infrastructure bill of all of the climate-related provisions. And Biden gives a press conference and he's like, look, everyone, we got a deal, bipartisan deal. It's a real victory here. No, it's not a victory.
Yeah.
It's not a victory. So Democrats are responsible as well. Then you look at the international stage. This is not something that the United States can do unilaterally. First of all, we would fail right now if we could do this unilaterally, but we can't. At the same time that we're failing domestically, you have a federal government, whether it's Democrat-led or Republican-led, that keeps antagonizing other world leaders whose cooperation we need in combating climate change. We're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, so look, tons of our viewers agree. I want to read one member comment. The Dragon Who Says Neat wrote in, good thing we got that fancy new infrastructure deal that's definitely going to address our future energy needs. Oh, wait. So, guys, Anna's point is indisputable. So we had an infrastructure bill that Biden claimed he was in favor of, and it addressed all of these green energy situations because we need the infrastructure to get more solar energy, wind energy, electric cars, etc. And we got to do it right now. So it's 116 degrees in Portland this year. What is it going to be next year? And where's it going to go to next? It's going to go everywhere, right? And so meanwhile, Biden is throwing a party over, we got bipartisanship, I got some Republicans agree. Who cares? Who cares? Oh, we're all gonna hold hands together as the planet melts. That is not an interesting or good case scenario. Oh, I got corrupt Republicans to agree with corrupt Democrats. No, you don't get a cookie for that. You don't get anything for that. The planet's still melting and you do nothing about it. That bipartisan infrastructure deal is garbage. It does nothing on green energy. And what it does is it privatizes our current infrastructure and makes you pay fees and tolls on it. If progressives are stupid enough to vote for that without getting the actual green energy reconciliation bill, then they're hopeless. And Nina Turner's the only hope left on the planet, okay, if that's the case. I hope to God they're not that stupid and naive that they would give in to this stupid bipartisan deal, because it's not gonna help us at all. So are we ever gonna do anything? And with this current, I have a definitive answer. As long as you vote for the establishment in primaries, no, the answer is a definitive no. Democrats are no better than Republicans on this. Yeah, they might be better on some social issues, not on this. It's an economic issue. That asset recycling we told you about yesterday, the one that sells off all of our public property in America.
Not all of our public infrastructure, but a lot of it.
Yes.
$100 billion worth of public infrastructure.
Yes, that asset recycling bill is the same one Trump proposed. And Biden's now throwing a party about, oh, I'm getting to pass the thing that Trump wanted.
Totally, yeah.
That is not interesting. That is not progressive. And so these guys are all horribly corrupt. So you look at Portland and Seattle and all this, and other reports said this is a kind of weather event that would normally be expected once in several thousand years. Guys, it happens every year. The flood in Houston was supposed to be once every 500 years. And so it keeps happening over and over again. We're in climate change, and our leaders are the worst, most corrupt, feckless people on the planet. And we're sitting here having stupid debates because the corporate media is like, oh, I can't tell facts. I don't know what facts are. So the cables are melting. The road is exploding because of how hot the planet is. I can't tell, 50-50. What does Joe Manchin say?
I know, it's insane. I mean, the fecklessness, especially in this moment of crisis, is what gets to me the most. Progressives were put in Congress to challenge establishment Democrats. If they're not willing to do it, then they should step out of the way. I mean, what was the point of running for public office if that's what they're gonna do? They're just gonna go along with what corporate Democrats want. Anyway, let's move on to.
Let me just say one last thing. Forrest Dudley wrote in on YouTube Super Chat. He said, I live in Bellingham in Northwest Washington. I use a ventilator to help me sleep due to sleep apnea. And last night it started flashing an overheat warning due to the extreme heat. Luckily it didn't die, but now I'm super nervous. So are people dying? Yes, 43 people have checked into emergency rooms in just over the weekend. Normally they would get one person, not 43. So there are many different reasons why people are dying because of the extreme heat. And yes, you're right to be concerned. And is there help on the way? The answer is absolutely not, no. So I don't know how long this can last before people rebel. And you gotta do it politically, but things are getting terrible out there, and these corporate Democrats and Republicans are never, ever going to help you.
Well, we have an update on the coronavirus pandemic. It's not a good one. It's actually an incredibly frustrating one. The World Health Organization and some local areas in the United States are now urging Americans who are fully vaccinated to wear masks indoors as a result of the Delta variant. This is the far more contagious, mutated version of the coronavirus, and there is some evidence that suggests that even individuals who have been fully vaccinated can get this variant, can be infected with this variant if they're in close proximity to someone. Now, the vaccine still works, and the important thing to keep in mind is that the vaccine protects you from being hospitalized or getting incredibly sick. So the likelihood of you getting hospitalized or dying from coronavirus, even this Delta variant, is minimal if you've been fully vaccinated. So let me give you the details and then I'll tell you why I personally disagree with the World Health Organization and Los Angeles County, which is now urging people to mask up indoors if they've been fully vaccinated. The World Health Organization officials have said that the Delta variant, now present in 92 countries, has the potential to become more lethal than others because of the ease with which it's transmitted. The agency's stance on face masks puts it at odds with the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which has dropped the mask requirement as more Americans are vaccinated and cases fall. Now, individual communities, though, are in fact recommending that people continue masking up, but not mandating it. The use of public or face masks in public spaces, including in Los Angeles County, where officials are suggesting people wear masks when inside grocery stores or retail stores, as well as at theaters and family entertainment centers and in workplaces when people's vaccination statuses are not known. But I want to be clear about something. As of Monday of this week, the number of new coronavirus cases in Los Angeles County were 3 new cases per 100,000 people. So the numbers continue dropping. The CDC says if you're fully vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask indoors. But LA County needs to go above and beyond and force everyone to wear masks. Well, it's not a force, it's a guideline. It's not a mandate, but it's frustrating, right? Because I do think it's overkill, and I'm also frustrated at all the people who refuse to get vaccinated, because when you're not getting vaccinated, that allows the virus to continue mutating, and eventually it'll get to a point where it'll be a variant where the vaccine won't be resistant to it anymore. It's just, I want this to be over already.
Yeah, we all do, and so I agree. Share Anna's frustration. Let me just bifurcate it here. So one, the frustration with I hesitate, but I gotta say, the idiotic people not taking vaccines, not just right wingers. There's some fringe left wingers too. They're like the stars and the stones telling me not to take it or something. Mercury's in retrograde. No, take the goddamn vaccine, okay? Okay, so now because they're not taking the vaccine, the Delta variant is running amok, right? And so it is far more contagious. There's good news about it. The good news is that it appears to be less dangerous, which, by the way, is normal. Normally, eventually a virus becomes less deadly because if it kills too many of the hosts, it's less able to survive. So usually it adapts just like this, where it becomes more contagious but less lethal, right? So this is one of the variants that's doing that, and that's why the Delta variant is taking over, because it's so much more contagious. In the United Kingdom, now 99% of the cases are Delta variant, okay? So that's how contagious the Delta variant is. So meanwhile, we have idiots here in America, mainly right-wingers, going, oh no, man, I'm tougher than a virus, man. Man, I'm so tough. Oh yeah, I'll just punch the virus in the face because the Trump told me to. So what am I gonna do with you, these losers, these idiots, right? And so, okay, I'm vaccinated. Before this came along, I'm less concerned, but I got kids. There's people that don't have a chance to get vaccinated yet, right? And these idiots are spreading it everywhere, pretending that there's like some windmill that they're chasing, an imaginary problem of Bill Gates tracking them through the 5G in the virus or whatever insane thing that they think. Meanwhile, there's a giant virus that's killed millions of people in the world, and they're like, what virus?
605,000 Americans alone have died from coronavirus. But look, that's the thing. If people refusing to get vaccinated had no impact on other people's lives, great.
Yeah, I wouldn't care at all. I'm done caring about you guys.
But the fact that their refusal to see this as a public health issue, like we need all people to work together on this. It's allowing for this mutation to happen, and then. Oh, honestly, I think health officials too. Like health officials don't think about the ramifications of the messaging that they're putting out there. So I'm specifically talking about Los Angeles County in this case. CDC says, look, the likelihood of someone who's been fully vaccinated getting sick from the Delta variant and then having to be hospitalized is almost non-existent. Them dying as a result, non-existent. The vaccine not only will lower your risk of contracting the virus, but it severely lowers the risk of you actually dying from the virus, getting hospitalized and dying. So that's what the CDC is saying. That's what several health officials, I've watched a number of interviews, read a number of statements from health officials, that's what they're saying. But LA County is like, no, just to be safe, if you've been fully vaccinated, wear a mask indoors anyway. Okay, we're also trying to convince people to get vaccinated. So if you're gonna force people to wear masks after they've been fully vaccinated indoors, then what's the point?
You're sending a message to everyone that the vaccine doesn't work.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, so guys, why do I even care about the Delta variant? As we were just saying, if you're vaccinated, you're likely going to be fine, right? And in fact, I want to get back to that in a second. But the Delta variant is putting more young people into hospitals. It could be a little misleading because a lot of the older people got vaccinated already, so it's not an accurate sample of the overall population. But if you got kids who cannot get the vaccine right now, kids are much less affected by coronavirus. But you worry a little bit. You worry a little bit because of these monsters running around who say, I don't care about your health, your kids' health, your parents' health. I don't care about you at all. All I care about is my freedom to be a dumbass, right? And so now, but I gotta share Anna's frustration and anger about the health officials, especially in LA.
Can we just go to the video first?
Yeah.
Because look, I get it. Look, we've been very careful in how we talk about this story because we want to encourage people to do the right thing. So I'm not one of these anti-maskers, but I do think that particularly in LA County, where you see mismanagement all around, they do things that are actually counterproductive. So here's a health official speaking to Brian Williams about what the reality is of the variant and who should wear the mask and who doesn't necessarily need to. Watch.
That's why I think that the guidance, and what we've said, and I think the CDC said this as well, is that if you have medical conditions, if you're immunocompromised, you have conditions that reduce the efficacy of the vaccine, it may be safer for you to continue to wear those masks indoors. And that's what I'm recommending as well. But if you're healthy, again, the risk here seems to be for mild disease in most cases, or asymptomatic disease. And that's where you need to use your personal judgment, acceptance of risk.
So if you're healthy and you've been fully vaccinated, again, the likelihood of you getting this variant, getting infected with it is minimal, but the likelihood of you getting hospitalized if you contract the virus is non-existent. And it's just, anyway, ridiculous.
Yeah, so look, the Moderna and Pfizer were about 95% effective against the normal version of coronavirus. Now they're a little less effective against the Delta variant. It drops into the 80s, but it's still a really good number. Johnson & Johnson is around 2/3 effective on the normal version, but on the Delta variant, they're not at all sure that it's going to work. And so you might need a booster. I have Johnson & Johnson. So that's an issue for me, and that's an issue for everybody who got Johnson & Johnson, right? That puts us back into some risk. Okay, now having said all of that, look, even if you get sick, as that expert just explained, it's a mild form of the sickness. You know what that is? That's a cold. So in the old days, before the vaccinations, when the right wing said, oh, it's just a cold, man, I don't need protection from a cold, you were wrong. It wasn't just a cold, it killed 600,000 people, right? But after the vaccine, it is basically just a cold. So now again, my kids aren't vaccinated. That's partly why I'm worried, right? And I know the kids are a lot less affected, right? So, but if the doctors and the scientists are all right, and we're not supposed to do politics, guys. This is a news show. We try to bring you the truth as much as possible. So I know Republicans were against the masks and the vaccines to begin with. Now the Democrats are like, no, pro-mask and vaccine no matter what, right? And that doesn't make sense either. When the scientists say, no, you get vaccinated, and even if you get sick, it's basically a cold, then listen to them. I don't give a damn about getting a cold. I don't care at all about getting a cold. I'm not gonna shut down my life for a cold. I'm gonna shut down my life to protect my parents so that they are not one of the 605,000 dead people, right? So it depends on the context. And given where we are now, an overreaction by whether it's LA County or anywhere else, right? That to say, all right, shut it all back down now, and everybody wear masks, and now is it gonna affect the restaurants again? Is it gonna affect the businesses again? No, we can't do that to protect against a cold. That doesn't make any sense at all.
I mean, there are kids dying on the streets of Los Angeles because of the homelessness issue, and they're talking about fully vaccinated people wearing masks indoors. LA County is full of the most incompetent lawmakers imaginable, okay? These local lawmakers are so pathetic and embarrassing. The way they mismanage every single issue. Look, Republicans are right when they talk about how awful LA has turned out to be as a result of the governance here. They're right about it. Now, their solutions are very different from what we want here, but at the end of the day, mismanagement is mismanagement, and I think they're sending the wrong message here with this mask guideline. Anyway,
I want to give the last word to one of our viewers. Matthias wrote in, it's because World Health Organization recommended using masks. They are concerned about the world population. That choice right now is the right choice, so maybe it doesn't make sense in the US, but they are concerned on the safety side. That is absolutely right. And I wanted to point that out because the World Health Organization takes into context that the great majority of the world is not vaccinated. And they are correct in their guidelines for the whole world. But when you get to America, where 66% of the adults have at least one shot of the vaccine, that is a completely different context. So if Democrats or whoever else is overreacting and panicking and telling everybody, but mask up again, etc., it's counterproductive and slightly dangerous because it'll lead to people getting less vaccines.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll do some international news with an update on what's going down in East Jerusalem.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be. Featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity, the UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFDR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
What's happening? I'm Dr. Rashad Richey, host of Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey. Here's the bottom line. I play no games about policy, period. Too many people's lives are at stake. So here's what I do. I challenge conservative ideology that hinders the growth of this country. I make sure we place our facts in proper context, and I have no problem debating anyone on a position that I have. Progressives have the ideas to change the world, but when you really look at it, progressives have always change this world for the better. I want you to tune into my new show, Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey, right here on the TYT Network, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time. I'll see you there.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian. We do news, we move forward.
Well, we got some international news for you. Unfortunately, it's not cheery news, but it's important to talk about. So let's get right to it.
هيا شايفين يا عالم هيا ما شهرين مسويه كلفت 300,000 شيكل كلفت والله العظيم لساتها البضاعه فيها لسه.
Israeli law enforcement has begun demolishing businesses belonging to Palestinians in occupied East Jerusalem, while the mainstream media and the corporate media in the United States has kind of moved away from this story to focus on other things. Unfortunately, tensions continue to rise in the area of East Jerusalem. Now, bulldozers, along with Israeli police forces, arrived in Al Bustan around 8 a.m., locals said, and took about 2 hours to bring down a building which housed a butcher's shop. The owner of the shop, Nidal Rajibi, had received the mandated warning letter, locals said, which had instructed him to pull the building down by last Sunday. So what Israeli authorities are telling Palestinians in East Jerusalem to do is literally demolish their own homes, their own businesses, and to move out of the area. And so what's the reasoning? Like, what are they telling these Palestinians? Why do they need to take down their buildings? Allegedly, they don't have the correct permitting for the buildings that they're doing business out of or living in. Now, I suspect that that's not the case. Now, the one Palestinian resident in the area told CNN, the Israelis told us to demolish our homes by ourselves, but the resident said we will not destroy our homes with our own hands. They demolished one store to put out a feeler for what is to come. They wanted to test the reaction of the Palestinian street. And so they're expecting more businesses and homes to be demolished in coming days. So this story, if that is the case, is likely to blow up further, and it could devolve to yet another war. And remember, just last May, the Israeli government was basically like doing airstrikes in Gaza, trying to evict Palestinian residents from Sheikh Jarrah. And that situation didn't just go away. It's unfortunately still simmering and could blow up again.
Yeah, okay, so meet the new boss, same as the old boss. So Naftali Bennett is the new Prime Minister of Israel, and he's also viciously right-wing and ridiculously orthodox in fundamentalist beliefs, okay? And it doesn't matter which religion. So why are they demolishing these buildings? It's literal ethnic cleansing, literal. So we get rid of the Palestinians, and who are they going to put in their place? Settlers. So Naftali Bennett has a long history of being very pro-settler, and the most radical religious sections in Israel is where he wants to put right next to the Palestinians, or better yet, just wipe out the Palestinians from East Jerusalem and repopulate it with the most extremist settlers that you could find. Okay, so that's, again, it's the definition of ethnic cleansing. You can say, well, I like ethnic cleansing when Israel does it. That's up to you, okay? But that's exactly what this is. On top of that, the legal system in Israel has systemic racism and discrimination built into it. So how so? I'll tell you exactly how, right? So they say, okay, you don't have the right permits here, so you Palestinians, okay? So we're gonna demolish your homes, your businesses, etc. We're gonna move you all out, okay, conveniently so that we could take Jerusalem. I mean, because you didn't have the right zoning permits. Now, the people living in those homes then say, okay, yes, but oh, great, no problem. We have deeds to our homes in what used to be Palestine and is now in Israel proper. So can I get my house back? No, you're a Palestinian, you have no rights. You're a dirty Arab. In the state of Israel, we don't give you rights. Oh no, but they get to vote and they have this right and that right. Okay, great, then give me my home back. I have a deed here for my home. It's right there, can I have it? No, you cannot have it because you're a Palestinian. And so that if that's not racism or discrimination, what is it? You can say, hey, no, Israel needs to protect itself, fine, okay. But you have to finish the sentence. Hence, I'm in favor of systematic racism against Palestinians. Hence, I'm in favor of ethnic cleansing, because that is exactly what the government of Israel is doing now, and it's indisputable. If you love Israel, you should hate what the government of Israel is doing now, and you should fight against it so you can reclaim a shred of the moral high ground, which unfortunately you lost decades ago. How long are you going to occupy these people?
Okay, so let's focus on that for a minute, because I think that's an important part of the story, and why I say that I suspect what they're arguing in regard to the permits isn't really actually the case, because this is an area that is illegally occupied by Israeli forces. So they don't have jurisdiction over this area, meaning that they can't enforce permit issues because they don't have, again, the authority to do that. So and by the way, the international community recognizes that East Jerusalem is being illegally occupied by Israeli forces. And Israel argues, no, this doesn't actually belong to the Palestinians. This is a sovereign area. East Jerusalem is a sovereign area. But what do you mean sovereign area? So what are you talking about, the permits? No, you're just demolishing people's businesses and homes without having any right to do it. And then they turn around, and if there's any type of retaliation, whether it be in the form of protest, whether it be in the form of them, using incendiary balloons, right? Airstrikes, let's go for the airstrikes. That's what I'm terrified about, because the situation is so close to devolving to what we saw between Israelis and the Palestinians in May. And as we've said multiple times, the military capability and the defense capabilities, it's an asymmetrical situation. It's not even comparable, right?
Yeah.
And real quick, Cenk, the New York Times just did this investigative report on the deadliest day of the conflict in May, right? Where 44 Palestinians specifically died in Gaza. And so they looked at the airstrikes to see whether the arguments from the Israeli government were accurate. So let's just take a quick look at this video, which gives you the visuals necessary to see what their investigative report was about.
The Times has uncovered new details about these attacks that show how the Israeli military used advanced, precision-guided bombs to hit Ishkontana's neighborhood more than 20 times that night. The Israeli military has said that these strikes were carefully targeted. But our investigation will show how Israel dropped some of the heaviest bombs in its arsenal without warning on a densely packed neighborhood and with limited intelligence about what they were attacking. There is no evidence that Israel struck or directly targeted the apartment buildings. They initially said that they had been aiming at a tunnel which collapsed and brought the buildings down. But weeks after the attacks and after repeated questioning from the Times, the military said that what they had actually hit was an underground command center, but that they hadn't known its size or exact location before they bombed. Israel says Hamas intentionally builds military infrastructure under residential buildings, which would be a violation of the laws of war. The Israeli military hasn't provided evidence of what it says was the command center. Experts say that the type of Israeli strikes we documented can easily lead to catastrophe and could be a war crime.
So that was the night where the airstrikes wiped out nearly an entire family. One man lost his wife and all of his sons. The only person who survived was his daughter. And the argument that there was some sort of command center underneath the area that they bombed, I mean, there was no evidence of that. And so it certainly conflicts with what their previous statement was in regard to doing very precise strikes that target Hamas. Well, it's weird that every time they say that, we look at the death toll, and the majority of victims on the Palestinian side tend to be civilians, including literally hundreds of children.
Yeah. Now, look, in America, you get a totally skewed perspective because of our media and because of lobbyists. So the rest of the world all knows that climate change is real. We're the only idiots having a debate about it because oil and gas lobbyists have convinced our politicians, and our corporate media will do anything the corporate politicians say and their advertisers say. In the case of Israel, lobbyists have gone and yes, and they gave in campaign contributions to Republicans and Democrats, 100%. Obviously they have. Anyone saying otherwise is flat out lying, right? And so they've created a debate where there is no debate. So the entirety of the world knows that those settlements are illegal, that Israel's committing war crimes. And what do we have here? We have a false debate in America. Oh, it's anti-Semitism. The whole world, every single person on the planet is anti-Semitic. That's why they all agree that Israel, when they drop bombs on an apartment building and murder families, is not doing anything wrong. No, it's just the anti-Semitism, right? It's absurd. Is there real anti-Semitism? Absolutely. It's actually raging out of control in America, right? And there's a Republican, Paul Gosar, we're going to talk about later in the show. All these Republicans go around, oh, Judeo-Christian heritage, Judeo-Christian. Meanwhile, Gosar's going around doing speeches with a virulent anti-Semite. And who, it's just the guy is over the top in how he hates Jews, etc., right? So they're attacking synagogues, etc. There's real anti-Semitism in America and in the world. Of course there is. But does that mean that Israel gets to bomb Palestinians and murder them with obvious lies? You think the New York Times is anti-Semitic? That's absurd. It's absurd. Right? So you're not helping Israel if you say, nope, I don't see it. War crimes and ethnic cleansing is totally okay if Israel does it. It isn't okay. It's horrific. It's destroying the moral fiber of Israel, let alone what it's doing in killing innocent Palestinians and ethnically cleansing them. It's unconscionable from any way you look at it.
When we come back from the break, we'll take a look at some of the Supreme Court rulings recently and how, if you're concerned about the Supreme Court doing anything negative in regard to social issues, your focus should probably be on how they're giving corporations the right to support child slavery abroad, because that's what they're really up to. We'll be back with that story and more.
Back on the Young Turks, Jake Huger, Anna Kasparian. We do a news program. It's called The Young Turks /TYT.
Yes.
Forward.
Well, I wanted to talk about SCOTUS, the Supreme Court, because there was a lot of fear about what the Supreme Court was going to do, this highly conservative Supreme Court. But I think that our focus is on the wrong thing. So there's some good news coming from this highly conservative Supreme Court, where they just declined to hear a case involving a transgender student who had sued to use the school bathroom that he identified with. Now, that means that since the Supreme Court refused to hear this case, they are allowing the lower court's ruling on the case to stand. And the lower court's ruling was great. So the case concerns the scope of Title IX that prohibits schools from discriminating on the basis of sex. It began when Gavin Grimm, that's the name of the student, a transgender male, who was then in high school, challenged the local school board's decision to require him to use either a unisex restroom or a restroom that corresponds to the sex female he was assigned at birth. Now, the court's decision to not review an opinion by the 4th U.S. Court or Circuit Court of Appeals means the public school students in the mid-Atlantic states covered by the 4th Circuit, as well as states governed by the 7th Circuit and the 11th Circuit, can use the bathroom that corresponds to their gender identity. So the issue, unfortunately, is unsettled in other states that are represented by other courts, and there is some likelihood that conservatives will try to bring this case back up and try to get it to the Supreme Court. But I do think that this is good news in that it sets a precedent indicating that this, again, very conservative Supreme Court doesn't want to hear these cases, or more importantly, challenge what the lower court has ruled in regard to the transgender bathroom issue. But when you look at a lot of the social issues that have made their way to the Supreme Court, this conservative court has not been awful, right? And I think that a lot of the fear mongering that we've heard from the Democratic Party and the corporate media has focused primarily on the social issues, when in reality, maybe we should have focused a little more on corporate issues, because the pro-corporate rulings of the Supreme Court have been brutal, including their willingness to support child slavery by American corporations. And that's why the Supreme Court gets no cookies. No cookies for you, I'm sorry. So I'll give you details on that child slavery ruling in just a minute. But Cenk, I know you're itching to jump in.
I am. Look, I love the point you're about to make on what Supreme Court cares about and doesn't care about. So let me, before we get into how they have helped corporations in a grotesque way, let me just say, look, we are thrilled with the ruling, or the fact that they didn't pick up the case and hence confirm the lower court's ruling on this issue of transgender bathrooms.
Definitely.
And so, but now I'm gonna make an ironic comment. Republicans, the voters, you're in the same situation as progressive voters, okay? Your politicians lie to you all the time. Oh, we're gonna get the transgender people, you hate them, we hate them, oh my God, we're gonna get them, right? And we gotta get the justices, and the justices will make the decisions, et cetera, and we'll win on all the social justice issues based on the Supreme Court. But you never do, because they don't really care about that. All they care about, including the Supreme Court justices, the money.
That's why they were put there, guys. Look, these social issues are important. I don't want to take away from that. And we do have a significant portion of the population in this country that want to discriminate, that hate the LGBTQ community, hate the fact that, equality should exist in a democratic country, should exist, period. But all of these conservative organizations that are funded by moneyed interests, right, don't care about the social issues at all. What they want more than anything is to ensure that they can install justices that crush workers, including workers abroad, including children abroad, that are forced into the cocoa trade by companies like Nestle and Cargill. I'll give you the details again in just a minute, but Cenk, sorry for interrupting.
No, that's okay. Just to finish the thought, guys, that social issues is the carrot that they dangle right in front of us for both the right wing and the left wing. Now, for you right wingers, I'm not on your side on social issues at all. I want to defeat you really badly, okay? But do you ever get what you want? Because we never get what we want. And oh, come a little further, and then you'll get it. I mean, agree to all of this corporate hegemony and give the corporate machines everything they want, and then we'll give you what you want. Well, us on the left, we never get it. You on the right, you never get it. Because it isn't about the social issues. The social issues is a trick to get you to agree to the corporate robbery that they are doing for all of us.
Yep.
We need to wake up and look, let's save democracy. The way you do it is getting money out of politics. And then once you do that, then let's go back to a fight on social issues and see who wins. Right? You think most of the country's on your side, we think that most of the country's on our side. I'd love to engage in that debate in an actual democracy rather than the sham we have now.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the corporate giveaways that were just handed down by the Supreme Court. I'll start with the most egregious example. So there is a group of people who are trying to sue Nestle and Cargill. Both of those companies have engaged in basically exploiting labor in African countries, specifically the Ivory Coast. And children, literal children, have been forced into slavery in order to do the trading, the harvesting of the cocoa beans, which Nestle and Cargill both use for their products. Now, keep in mind that these are two companies that are based here in the United States. Financial decisions are made here in the United States, which is why these 6 individuals wanted to sue these two companies in the United States. The Supreme Court has decided, no, you don't have the right to sue. Okay, so the 6 men who sued claimed that those companies aided and abetted child slavery because they, quote, knew or should have known that the farms were using enslaved children. Now, while neither company owns or operates the farms in the Ivory Coast, by the way, the children are also trafficked to the Ivory Coast for this purpose. They had bought cocoa beans from them and also provided the farms with technical and financial resources in exchange for exclusive rights to their crops. So again, it seems like they knew quite a bit and were happy to exploit, the cheap labor there. Now, Justice Clarence Thomas, writing for the 8-1 majority, meaning it wasn't just conservative justices here. Liberal justices also voted along with the conservatives here. 8-1 majority said that the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit erred in allowing the suit on the grounds that Nestle and Cargill had allegedly made, quote, major operational decisions, end quote, in the United States. Thomas said the 6 plaintiffs, who are from the nation of Mali, improperly sought to sue under the Alien Tort Statute for conduct that occurred outside of the United States. So this argument is ridiculous, and what they're arguing, the justices who voted the way that they did, is, well, the child slavery didn't happen in the United States. The child slavery happened in the Ivory Coast. And so Nestle isn't responsible. Yeah, but Nestle is a US-based company, and there needs to be justice. If these 6 individuals can't sue Nestle, which is based in the United States, then where exactly are they supposed to go to get justice? That's the question.
Yeah, okay, so there's a number of issues here. So first, on this child slavery issue, look, are there real legal issues at hand? Yes. So let me break it down real quick. You have to see, hey, did they actually do it? Did they know about the child slavery or didn't they? But the Supreme Court never got to that question because they said, we don't care. We just want to know, is it involved the Alien Tort Statute or not? And in order to determine that, we have to see if it is materially affected by something that happens in the United States, okay? And that's a fair question because if there's a business in the Ivory Coast and they're just a local business, the US has nothing to do with it. So suing in the United States Supreme Court about something that the Ivory Coast business is doing doesn't make any sense. So I get that, right? So then let's go to the heart of the issue. Nestle, Cargill, et cetera. No matter where they technically got started or are based, whether they're in Europe or America, do they make decisions here in the United States? And the answer to that is actually super obvious and pretty much conceded in the court cases. Yes, they make financial decisions here. Well, now, if you say financial decisions don't count and only the decisions made in each individual country counts, well, that makes no sense at all. All decisions are financial. Yeah, they're doing the child slavery so they can make more money, okay? Nestle didn't go and move their headquarters to Ivory Coast so they can make a decision there. This doesn't just affect the Ivory Coast. It's not localized to that country. They're making decisions that affect the whole planet. The idea that these corporations are based anywhere or an American company or a European company or a Japanese company is absurd. They're multinational corporations and their decisions, the financial decisions they make in boardrooms in the United States affects the whole planet. Any reasonable person, all of you watching right now, whether you're left wing, right wing, or independent, you all agree with me because that's obvious, right? But the Supreme Court looks at it, and remember, Clinton and Obama bragged every time they put somebody on the Supreme Court, they are very business friendly. Don't worry, they're very business friendly. No, that's what I'm worried about. Look, businesses are important and vital and we have a business, right? But them running the government, running the Supreme Court, running all of our politicians, and then allowing themselves to do child slavery is deeply problematic. And that's exactly why these justices were picked. And the two that he picked, Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, 2 out of the 3, they both had cases where they literally allowed corporations to kill people with no consequences. That's why they were picked. That wasn't a bug, that was a feature. Those guys, one was a SeaWorld case where a guy got eaten by a killer whale, and Kavanaugh was like, who cares? No liability, right?
Insane, absolutely insane. The trucker.
Gorsuch case is the trucker case. Trucker's freezing to death. The corporation orders him to stay on the road. He's already got frostbite, he's gonna die. They ordered him to stay, he didn't stay, and Gorsuch said, yeah, of course you should be fired. You should have sat there and froze to death. Now, when you see vicious decisions like that, you think monster. And if you're a right winger and you're pro-life, you would think monster, right?
Hi, this is Trace from the Horror Queers podcast. Shudder is the ultimate streaming service for fans of horror, thrillers, and the supernatural. Shudder offers an unbeatable selection from Hollywood favorites and cult classics to original series and critically acclaimed new genre films you won't find anywhere else. Explore the best collection of horror that pushes boundaries, showcases bold, original storytelling, and offers something new to watch every week. Available ad-free and through the platforms you're already on. Shudder. So good, it's scary. Sign up at shudder.com.
But everybody in power, both Democrats and Republicans, look at that and go, that's my boy, that's my boy. You're willing to let corporations kill or do slavery? Right ahead, you're on the Supreme Court. That's your best qualification to get on the Supreme Court.
And the other ruling recently undid the progress made by Cesar Chavez in California. So look, I mean, the second ruling is actually logical, is far more logical than the ruling I told you about regarding child slavery. Because when you live in a country where private property is considered more important than actual human lives, then this is the way that they vote. So Cesar Chavez, as we know, fought hard to ensure that farmers had actual working conditions that weren't brutal and devastating, and also made it easier for organizers to go onto farms and to help farmers unionize, right? Organize. And so this latest Supreme Court ruling in regard to organizing efforts on these private farms basically indicates that no, organizers cannot go onto this private property because it violates the private property of the owners of the farms. And so just to go back a little bit and give you more context, there was a state regulation issued in 1975 and unique in the nation. It allowed union organizers to meet with agricultural workers at work sites in the hour before and after work and during lunch breaks for as many as 120 days a year. Now, the conservative justices didn't like that and they voted against it, basically striking down that rule from 1975. Chief Justice John Roberts, writing for the majority, said that the access regulation grants labor organizations a right to invade the grower's property. That meant, he wrote, that it was a taking of private property without just compensation. I don't see how that's taking of private property, but that's, I mean, they'll say whatever they need to say to protect the property owners. That's what this is really about.
So let me explain that one real quick. First of all, I want to give a shout out to Dolores Huerta, who was critical, along with Cesar Chavez, in getting rights to those farm workers. One of my proudest moments when I had my kids meet her. She's a living legend. So now, in terms of the essence of this case, guys, there's two kinds of takings, and it's really not that complicated. When the government takes something in regulating a business, sometimes they have to enter the premises, for example, do inspections. The example I often give is elevator inspections, right? They're either regulatory takings or per se takings. Per se taking is much more serious, and they might be able to block you from coming onto their property if it gets classified as that. Regulatory is normal. Hey, I got to go on there to make sure that the meat is not rotten. Okay, that's a regular. In this case, John Roberts moved the union organizing into a per se taking, meaning no, it can be absolutely blocked, or you have to give tremendous amount of money to the company to be able to justify it. But it's actually even more dangerous than that, because it might apply to all regulations.
Yep.
In which case, it would annihilate every regulation we have in the country. No, you're not allowed to inspect my meat. You're not allowed to inspect my hospital. You're not allowed to inspect anything because it's a per se taking. Oh my God, then we would have no regulations left. Then corporations win on everything. They can do anything they want and they won't be subject to inspections, laws, regulations, or anything. This Supreme Court is totally out of control. Every once in a while, John Roberts will, again, betray the right wing on a social justice issue, right? And then he'll turn around and go, oh yeah, any regulation of corporations is illegal. Did anybody notice? Did anybody notice? No, the corporate media loved it and called me bipartisan and a fair guy, and I'm the sweetest, loveliest guy there is. I just let corporations rob you guys blind for the rest of time. That's who John Roberts is. That's who this Supreme Court is. And look, I'm gonna say one last thing about all these international corporations. When it's convenient for them, they're international. Hey, I'm gonna do a tax loophole called a double Irish or the Dutch sandwich, okay? Oh, my headquarters is in the Cayman Islands. I don't know what you're talking about, right? I'm an international company. Oh, okay, good. If you're an international company, then I'm gonna deny you any US contracts. The government contracts are for US companies. No, I'm a US company. Okay, then I'm gonna hold you responsible for child labor that you're doing based out of the actions you took in America. No, I'm not a US company. Make up your mind, which one is it? And the reality is, if we had a government that was actually a democracy, they would hold those corporations accountable on our behalf to protect us. And again, right wing, you don't like child trafficking, right? Nobody does, right? And here they go, no, as long as it's a corporation, we'll let them do whatever they want and we'll let them run amok. This whole thing is a highway robbery orchestrated by corrupt Republicans and Democrats and oftentimes the corrupt corporate media to let corporations get anything they want.
Cheery note to leave you with as we transition to our second hour. We'll be back in just a few minutes where we'll give you an update on the Miami tower collapse.